There's only so much you can do when it comes to cutting down your budget. I have spent a lot of time talking about where and how to cut back in budgeting. But one thing I have not talked a lot about is the opposite side of the equation. Yes, you can cut back on your spending and make your budget lean, but there comes a point where you can't cut anymore, where there's all the juice in the lemon or whatever it is you're squeezing has been squeezed out and there's nothing left to squeeze. And when that happens, your problem isn't a spending problem anymore. Your problem is an income problem. And you need to start thinking about, okay, how can I make more money because I can't cut back anymore? So I'm going to talk about some different ways that you can increase your income. They're not going to be otherworldly, outside the box type of things. They're going to be very basic here. But I'm going to try to frame it into the lens of depending on your situation. Are you looking for an increase in income in the short term, or is this more of a long-term thing? So in the short term, if you are trying to boost your income because maybe you're trying to get a short-term goal accomplished, maybe you're paying off a debt or something like that, the quickest way to do that is to increase your work hours. So maybe your company offers overtime. Well, now it's time to start taking that. If your company does not offer that, and there's not really a way to increase your work hours at the company you're at, then you may have to consider a second job, maybe a second part-time job. Or you could go into the gig economy, look at different things that are out there, and start to get extra money in that way. Yes, it's not the ideal long-term solution, which is why I'm calling it a short-term solution, because yes, you probably don't want to be working 2 jobs for decades. And yes, you probably don't want to be doing the gig economy for decades either, especially since the gig economy usually uses your car a lot. So you'd be putting a lot more miles on your car over the span of time, and that can be a bad thing. But in the short term, if you're trying to figure out a way to create margin in your budget and there's no more fat left to cut from your budget, then this is a quick way to boost that income, create a bigger margin, and get whatever goals you're trying to accomplish done. If you're trying to think longer term and you're thinking, okay, I can't really increase my income doing a second job or a gig economy for years, what is my next alternative? Well, unfortunately, your next alternative is to go get a skill. Maybe you need to go back to school and build up a skill so that you can become more marketable, so that you can increase your income. So some ways to do that would be to either go to a trade school, to go get an associate's degree, or to go back to college and get a bachelor's degree. Or maybe if you already have a bachelor's degree, you're going to get a master's or something like that. Each one of these has a benefit to it. And so when I was doing some research on it, I found some interesting stuff. If you have only a high school diploma, you can expect after all your working years are done to earn about $1.6 million. Sounds like a lot. And honestly, it is a lot. But here's what you could make if you had an associate's degree. This is 2 years of college. If you had an associate's degree, on average, over the span of your life of working, you could expect to make about $2 million. It's about $400,000 more than the high school diploma. And if you go and get a bachelor's degree, you can expect over the span of your full working years to make about $2.8 million. So that's a lot of money too. The point I'm trying to get here is that if you go and get yourself a marketable skill, then you can expect an increase in wage. Obviously, the downside here is that many of these things are going to cost money. And we know what the wrap is for student loans right now, right? Student loans are those things that you're stuck with forever and all of that. So I'm not saying that you should just go and do it and saddle up more debt, but I am saying that you need to look at your options. You need to look at your options and see what you could potentially do that would get you the skills you need to increase your wage. Now, I tried to find for trades how much they would make over the span of their life, and I couldn't find that information, unfortunately. I think it's probably closer to that associates number that I mentioned earlier, because when I was doing a lot of research, I found that many trades also have some sort of connection with associate's degrees. So you can go and get an associate's that happens to be a trade skill, like, for example, electricians and things like that. So it's possible that that associate's earnings is similar to a tradesman's skill. But unfortunately, I couldn't find it on the internet, so I'm kind of just throwing guesses out there. And unfortunately, I can't really give you much more than that. But one of the positive things about the trades, if you're, again, thinking, well, I don't have the money to go get associates or bachelor's or whatever, then maybe the trades is your route, because a lot of times that is on-the-job training and it's counted toward hours. And once you get the hours, then you can get the certificate and all the things that go with it, with the increase, etc. But the bottom line is this. No matter what you do, if you have a high school diploma right now and you're trying to figure out how do I increase my income, because right now I can't be doing the second job and gig and all this other stuff, then I would consider going back and getting a skill, whether it's going back to school or going into the trades, but doing something to get yourself some skills so that you become more marketable, so that you can demand a higher income. So then, wrapping this up, going back to the beginning, there's only so much you can do when it comes to cutting down your budget. And if you're at that point where you can't cut any more, then you need to start thinking about it from the opposite end of the equation, which is, okay, how can I make more money so that I can create a bigger margin in my budget and feel a little bit more comfortable? If you have any thoughts about what I have talked about today, whether it is the finances with your family and friends, or winning is not accidental, or the one that I just mentioned, increasing your income, go ahead and let me know down in the comments down below. And as always, thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you haven't liked the video yet or subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. It helps the channel to grow and reach more people. And thank you for watching again.